Welcome to episode 206 of the CUInsight Experience. I'm Randy Smith, one of the co-founders of CUInsight.com, and I'm joined by my co-host.
That's me. I'm Jill Nowacki, the founder and CEO of Humanidei.
This episode is brought to you by Trellens. Trellens is a leading technology partner for credit unions, delivering innovative technology solutions to help credit unions achieve more. With a comprehensive suite of analytics, cloud, and talent solutions, the Trellens team ensures credit unions increase efficiency, manage risk, and improve member experience. So check them out. We appreciate the support all season. Jill and I have been diving into conversations about leadership, credit unions, and living our best lives. We're bringing on some incredible guests from across the credit union movement, leaders that we admire, and we're lucky enough to call friends. And today is no exception. We're pretty excited about this. We're tackling a topic every organization faces, but sometimes doesn't want to talk about, maybe openly, and that's growing pains. Growth is exciting, but it can also bring new challenges, new dynamics involving leadership needs and the inevitable discomfort that comes from change. How do leaders guide their teams through these transitions while maintaining culture, engagement, and momentum? We'll discuss the complexities of scaling an organization, the leadership skills required to navigate rapid change, and how to ensure that as we grow, we don't lose sight of what got us there in the first place, what made us successful. To help us unpack this, we truly have a special guest today. She is one of the most inspiring leaders in credit unions and a good friend of ours. Jilly, who are we talking to today? Who do we get to have this amazing conversation with?
Well, today we have the queen of all sister queens, Renée Sattiewhite, with us. I know you'll link to Renée's full bio and past episodes in the show notes, but I think it's important to share some highlights of Renée too, which include, of course, that she is the president and CEO of the African American Credit Union Coalition, where she has served in the role for a decade now, just celebrating her 10th anniversary. In addition, Renée is a tremendous partner to a number of other global credit union and cooperative organizations, serving on the boards of CU for Kids, of the African Cooperative Development Foundation, of AACUC, just to name a few. I think it's important that we mention that as we move into this conversation about growing pains, because one belief I hold is that success creates success. We know that when leaders grow, they're sought after to help lead more. And we're going to dig into how Renée has not only grown AACUC, but also that we talk about that impact that she's made through the growth of other individuals and other organizations that she's helped out during those periods of growth. So even with all of this busyness, though, Renée, you're still making the time to be with us today. And we appreciate that so much. Thank you, Renée, for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. Are you kidding me? To be with Jill and Randy? Woohoo! Lucky me.
We're the lucky ones. So this is going to be fun, but I'm going to jump right into this. And this was a question that when Jill and I were talking about having you on, we were like, we have to go back to kind of move forward here. So in 2020, AACUC and you specifically were in high demand. We talked about many times your name was coming up in our house because we were like, we don't think Renée slept in the past 6 months, but you were helping the credit union system address systemic racism head on. You added products during that time, services, team members to meet the needs. And when we thought of this topic, that's why exactly we thought about you. What was the biggest challenge when you were scaling up in so fast? I mean, that was like at an unbelievable clip.
Wow. I think the most challenging thing was that the hires were remote. So the new hires were remote. They didn't know the history of AACUC, and it was harder to make a connection. So and then the time zones, right? So you got these different time zones. We're in the Eastern time zone. You're hiring team members from all over the place that you don't know. So that physical bond wasn't there yet. And then AACUC, because of that growth, we skipped a whole lot of levels that help you level set, get redone, so we've gone through really a lot of people to get to the core team that we have now. But going from 0 to 100 in such a short time, the new hires, they knew what they were great at, but they didn't know the Renée way. And as you guys know, there's a way that I do things, and that stems from my possibility of serving people passionately. And our brand excellence. And I think that's what distinguishes AACUC from other organizations is I am a stickler for the excellence of how things are supposed to look. I am very much aware of the stereotypes of African Americans, and I do my best to have this organization and myself represented in a way where you don't see that. I don't want us to be the exception. I want us to be the rule. And so one of the other things that was difficult was making sure, asking the board to trust me that we needed all those people, because things were getting done by me and volunteers. And so why would they want to spend money during a pandemic? Why would you want to add people? And so coming out of that, we were able to do so because, again, we skipped so many different levels. So I would say the most challenging thing was that people were remote and didn't have a connection to AACUC or the history. And for years, our volunteers carried us. So our volunteers were part of what we did. They took the place of some of our team members or team members that we should have had. And so to go from no volunteers to a team that were paying people to do the work, again, they were great at what they did. And I love to say this. I chose everyone on my team. I hired everyone on my team. And as we'll talk a little later, that's not sustainable. And so what happens with that? But since I did hire them, I had an expectation and knew that they would be great. I think that part trumped everything else. They were so good at what they did that they were able to come together.
Let me ask you this, because something was just sticking out to me that I think is different, but I'd kind of like to take it from the opposite side. You mentioned, a couple times there, that going like 0 to 100. You also were ready. Like when opportunity presented itself, a lot of people miss opportunities. It's like, oh, we're going to scale up over the next 3 or 4 years. Well, I don't think you would have been today if you didn't have those 6 months where you were just running and scaling. I would be remiss if we didn't talk about that a little bit. How were you, I guess, able to go, okay, I know if the strategic plan said a month ago, this is new. We're going to capitalize on this even if there are some growing pains, because did you have that vision of what this could be?
Absolutely. So the thing about AACUC, and you guys have heard me say it, I believe the organization is anointed. And believing that, right? Like I really believe that, then you have to accept the help. And so when God gives you the sign, you need to know what you're doing. You need to know how to make it grow. I think the most important thing about what happened during that time was that my own personal skills. So I had run my own training company for years, and I had done that with credit unions. So I knew what credit unions were about. I knew I'm an executive coach, so I dealt with credit union presidents. So I knew the psyche of people. I had the relationships already. I had good relationships already. So I think that my prowess as a small business owner was what really helped us. One, me to know how to do stuff, right? And then, and to be able to scale it. I've worked with large credit unions. And now I'll say this, Bert J. Hass Jr., working with me, I mean, you got to get it in. But working with those large credit unions, I've seen scale. I worked at Creditor Resources. I started the training department that they never had. And so already creating things for my customers, I think gave me a bird's eye view of what AACUC members needed. And I was real adamant with the board, and they were in agreement that we were going to be the organization that came out of this with a heart. And having that intention, I'm all about intention. So having that intention that I think was our North Star is that we weren't looking at it for the profits. We were looking at it for the well-being of our members. And I dare say that that's what came out to the industry. That's what came out to our membership.
You were talking about this commitment to excellence, and I would absolutely say that's something that I see in you. I know that Renee way, like it's so clear, and I admire it. I know AACUC delivers on that high quality product. If you listeners haven't been to an AACUC conference, they need to go. And something that I can relate to a lot with my own journey is that when, like in a capacity where it's human delivery and you're the one who's visualizing, strategizing, and executing on that, you have an incredibly high level of control over the executed item, the quality that you deliver. But as you scale up and you delegate that, some of that control is lost. And even if you do have systems or processes in place, businesses demand flexibility and judgment that can't always be anticipated ahead of time. We don't always know what a member is going to say, what a client is going to ask for. And we can't give a handbook that says, I wish there was a flow chart for every communication challenge that may come up, but like, it's just not. And I think sometimes with credit unions, we see that too. A CEO either stays in the same organization for a long time. And so, as you said, it's not sustainable for you to choose everyone on your team forever. And if your credit union grows from 20 million to 200 billion to 2 billion, you run into the same challenges. Or if you go from one organization to another, if you get success, a lot of times CEOs will move to a larger credit union. And then maybe those things that have served them well historically, that high level of hands-on control, stop serving them well at that point. So how do you scale up, whether it's because you're moving to a bigger organization or your organization is moving with you, and still deliver that same quality that you always have?
So that is probably, this sounds cliche. That's a great question. That really is.
I hear that all the time in job interviews.
It's like, okay. So for me with AACUC, I told the team that Sattiewhite Training Productions was hired to resurrect AACUC after the executive director, Lillian Priest, died. And so she passed away in 2014. So my team, my SDP team, and one contractor, Tanya Mathis, she's rest in peace, ushered in a new era at AACUC. And what that looked like between Tanya and I, we had all these systems. She was really good. She had worked at the Boys Club of America, and she had done membership. So she had all this talent and skill. So it was basically the two of us. So what she didn't do, I did, right? So thank God, again, having run my own small business, I knew about bookkeeping. I've taught executive directors financial reporting. So those things I knew how to do. So when I told the team, I said, you cannot change what we've put in place. You can only make it better. Because if they left, I'd still have to go back and do it. That was the rule, right? Well, that wasn't enough. And so thank God for Emma Hayes. So Emma Hayes, who is our chief diversity officer, she gave me some coaching. And what she said was, because I was frustrated, they don't get it. They're making these mistakes. And she says, well, are they clear with your expectations? And I wasn't. She goes, so you need to make sure that you need to tell them what success looks like. That was the most important thing that's ever been said to me, I think, in my business career. What does success look like? Once that's what it is, the team members can then ask probing questions. If they don't understand, well, that's not enough information. Well, okay, well, let me ask you some more clarifying questions. So that's what the team has learned to do, is to ask me clarifying questions. I've learned to tell them what success looks like. If I don't tell them what success looks like, they know they need to ask me. And then I sent everybody who's a W-2 employee to a training called Landmark Education. Landmark Education, I did it when I was, I think when I was dating Hubert Hoosman. So you know how long ago that was. In the 90s, I believe. But that education was phenomenal. And that technology still rings true today. It's not a one size fits all. It's different for everybody who attends the Landmark Forum. However, it does help you level set and learn how to create possibility. And so from where I sit at this juncture at AACUC, it's all about what's the possibility. Imagine enrolling in the possibility of people serving other people passionately. Imagine if that was your mantra every day. It's my mantra. And so trying to enroll my staff into that possibility. And that Landmark Education, they're also impeccable in their thought, word, and deed. And so how they lay everything out when you walk in to do the forum. They're more anal than I am, Jill. They measure how many inches are between each chair. It is impeccable. And I try to explain to people, when you're putting on an event and people walk in, how it's presented means everything. That can tell people, oh, this is going to be top notch or this is going to be crappy. I'm not going to pay attention. So it matters. And so it was funny at the Hall of Fame, we had stuff on the tables and I walk in and the things are just kind of haphazard everywhere. So I go into Renee trainer mode. Okay, we're going to do this. This is what the book is right here. You're going to place it here because you're going to place the coffee on top of this. And people thought I was anal, but I explained what I just said. When people walk into a room and it's presented so beautifully, their expectation is high. You don't want to make it where people are like, oh, this is not worth my time because you've just thrown things out there. So I'm impeccable I try to be impeccable with my thought and deed. I try to be impeccable with how we maintain relationships. So basically letting the staff know you can be creative as possible. One person thinks I'm a micromanager. I said, I'm not a micromanager. You just have to do it the Renée way.
Awesome.
As you have grown that staff or grown that team and grown that size of it, Randy once gave me guidance that most people, including me at the time, which is why Randy was giving me the guidance, wait too long to hire the next employee. And I think in my case, that does sometimes come from that, I want to choose everyone. Like my team is handpicked by me right now too. And when they do come on board, I want to be able to nurture them and grow them and teach them the Humanidei way through that. But it does make some slow to hire. And because I know what it takes to get people there, it also, that first thought of, I can't tell you how many times I'll work with somebody and they'll be like, the solution is we're going to add more FTE. And I'm like, I don't think it is a great solution. We do not throw FTE at every problem we have. At the same time, I might be on kind of the other side of that spectrum where I'm like, if we add FTE, do you know how much time that's going to take? So I know there's a happy spot in the middle with that. How do you know when it's time to add to your team? How do you know when it's time to bring somebody new on?
This is going to be funny. So I'm truly led by the Holy Spirit. And I once told Marie Smith when he was the chair, I get that this is not the model that the board of directors want to hear when things aren't going well, but it's kind of what I've listened to and listening to, I guess, if you will, for other people, that inner spirit telling me what needs to happen. What we've been blessed with as an organization is that I've had the people already in the wings waiting. I thought I was going to hire a COO. And I did hire a COO. And what's funny is the person that I hired, she's now the chief admin officer because I'm smart like that. What I did was the lady I was going to hire, to get ready for her being my number two, I promoted my VP of operations to interim COO. Well, Jill, she started killing it. I'm like, well, I don't want to disrupt the staff. Let me bring her in to something different. And so we were all in agreement with it and it worked out. And so I think that knowing what I'm working toward, I've been pretty bold with the board and told them that I believe that AACC will be a $25 to $50 million organization in 3 years. We're only at 3 million right now. So that's pretty aggressive. Well, clearly, if we're going to scale like that, I need people around this organization that can get us there. And so bringing in that new talent was part of that. So I think that at every phase, I've been lucky enough or blessed enough to be able to have people already waiting in the wings, like Danya Dorman. So Danya Dorman, she's our chief engagement officer right now. She was able to do our second virtual conference and she did it flawlessly. It was beautiful. It was great. She gave me an executive report that was Renée stuff. It was better than what I could have done. And I'm a technical writer on top of being a trainer. My God, it was phenomenal. I was thrilled. I wanted to hire her on the spot. I sent it to the board. They wanted to hire her on the spot. Well, we talked numbers. She was making way more money than we could afford, but because she was at Suncoast. But it was clear that if we were going to take AACC to a whole nother level, I needed people with different skill sets. So she came on. I loved her energy. And so that's an example of, we had a volunteer doing the work of a full-time employee who impressed us so much that we said, oh, we got to have her. We couldn't afford her at the time, but we got her anyway. And because I trust in the Holy Spirit and I believe this organization is anointed, we've gone from having, no full-time employees to 9 over the course of 4 years. And that's huge for a small nonprofit who depend on donations to run. Our products and services, while they're great, they're not scaled yet to sustain us.
Absolutely. And Renée, I'm going to turn this one to you then too, because what Renée and I just said, we've handpicked our people. They are ours. you used to be that way at CUInsight, but you've turned a corner. And so you've moved CUInsight, you've grown CUInsight. You're now on your second CEO who isn't one of the founders. And as of right now, I know you have at least one team member you've never met before. And so you may have to go back a few years back to when Lauren joined the team, maybe 6 years ago or so now. What did it take for you to turn that corner into being able to say, in order to scale this up, I can let go of some of this hands-on control?
That's a good question. To start, I have to go back. There was coming to a realization that my skill set as a founder and an entrepreneur might not have been the skill set that was needed to get past where we were. So there was a kind of that inward look that both Dave and I had to have to say, we might need a different set of skills if we want to take this to the next level. And that was something that, quite honestly, our mindset didn't work for that. So there was that moment of realization there. The other thing, the biggest thing I would recommend for everybody as you're transitioning is to live with somebody who's also an executive coach and does strategic planning, because then you can just, the amount of times after we hired Lauren, and it's happened again as Greg came in and has been coming into the role as well, that I go to Jill first and she's like, can that wait for your founders call? Let's see how that plays out. And so something that I realized that I had to do was I got away from saying the CUInsight way, which was really the Randy way. And what I didn't stop reinforcing was what made CUInsight CUInsight. So like always coming back to that collaborative of the industry, working with others. We've said it since the beginning. We don't feel we have competition because we work with everybody. And so reinforcing, whether it was to Lauren or to Greg now, that when we're talking to say, this is what made CUInsight, how they go about doing it. That's why we hired them, because you know what? I wasn't the person to do that. And it was really tough for me in the beginning. In transition, there's times where it's tough for me, where I'm just like, ooh, that's not the way I would do it. So that idea of pausing, waiting, and seeing how it shakes out, because I think we've all seen it with different skill sets. There are different ways to get to a similar end, and it might not be exactly the way that I did it. Because very much like when Renee was talking about it, and Jill, I was there as you were building Humanidei. In the beginning, it was just Dave and I. We were working out of our dining room tables. He's in Florida. I'm in South Carolina at the time. And that was it. You mentioned when you're a team of two, you kind of find out what works, what you're best at. So everybody knew me because I was doing all the front facing stuff. Dave was making sure we got paid and everybody got paid. So, and in the beginning, he was learning how to build websites for dummies, literally the book, and building our first website. So obviously that changed over time, and it had to for us to scale up. And part of that was me taking a step back. I still get to have all the fun in the world strategically. They allow me to still play on this podcast to keep me out of the way, I think. So it really was taking it away. And that's something that I've talked a lot about to people as they're scaling up, is at some point we almost have to get out of that founder mentality. And when we do that, you hope that the organization has the bones and the culture but it's the organization way. Like, so to me, that's, yes, the AACUC way has been built off the Renee way, but it's the AACUC way now. And that's flowing through the entire system. That's the next question that I had for Renee was, you've mentored a lot of people. I know that I wear a tie every single time I go to anything with Renee and the AACUC thing. And that's about the only time I wear a tie. But your culture and what you've built in the AACUC way has went way beyond your organization and even your membership at that point. And so I know that was something, and again, one of those questions that Jill and I were thinking on. When you think about the impact that you're having even outside the walls of AACUC, and to the individuals that you've been able to help further their careers or their organizations, like, how do you, I'm going to go back to like one of the things Jill said in the intro, like, how do you make sure that you still have time for that?
So you have to be intentional. That's the first thing, is to be intentional. I remember and Jill was one of the ladies, I don't want to cry. I remember when AACUC received the Anchor Award in 2022. And Gigi, our friend Gigi, she's putting on a tiara. Gigi came out.
If I knew how to do a screenshot, I would have taken.
It was great, right?
Yeah.
Gigi came out with her tiara on, and she curtsied, and she said, I bet you all are wondering why all of these ladies have on these tiaras. And it's because of that lady right there. We had created Sister Queens during the pandemic. It was just an email exchange of all different types of women throughout the industry, different levels in their career. It was phenomenal. It was fun. I wanted for people to have a safe space and to women to know that they were cared for, and if they needed each other, to call on each other. We did all kinds of different activities, which were crazy, but they surprised me. And 80 women had on tiaras. And they stood up and they did the Queen's wave, and it was amazing. And so just that camaraderie, right? All different walks of life, all different backgrounds. The diversity was ridiculous. I love what Lucy Ito says about AACUC all the time. And she would say that we're the most diverse organization in the system. And I believe that. We lean into that. And we're the organization that has all the young people coming to our stuff. They are jiving with AACUC. And it's because I get out of the way, Randy. I believe that the AACUC founders, they were so good to me. They put me out front as a young person. And that's my job to do the same. But to have them equipped, for them to know when to wear a tie, for them to know how to shake somebody's hand, for them to know how to eat at an event, at a seated dinner. I teach that. I mean, that's what Sattiewhite Training Productions used to do. I used to actually teach how to eat at a dinner, because if you're people of color and you're not exposed to that, you just don't know. Jill and I were at the wine auction this past weekend on Friday, where the Children's Miracle Network raised $2.2 million to help the kids. That was 500 people from the credit union system were able to do that. It was phenomenal. Well, I remember telling Bill Cheney a couple of years ago that if Black people don't know that these rooms exist, and if you're not inviting us, we just don't know. So thank you because he invited me. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me be at this table. Well, he took that to heart. You know, Bill doubled down. He doubled down on DEI, and he's taken that to heart. And this year, Jill, don't you think there was more Black people than I've ever seen? A lot of Asian people. It was really diverse, and it didn't feel pushed or forced. It was really about people helping people and us trying to help these kids. And so I think that knowing that people don't hear an angry Black woman, but a passionate woman who wants the best for everybody in our industry.
I have a question for both of you too, because you've both grown and you're scaling up businesses, right? And this is going to be a complete flip side. It's probably one that you're both going to be like, oh, I don't like you talking that way. Have you had to give anything up that you used to do, that you liked doing, that you just realized that you maybe had to start saying no to things that you used to be able to say yes to? Because quite honestly, your time is valuable. And
I don't get to do training. Training is my life. Training is what I do. It's who I am. And I'm a better writer than I am trainer, but I think that's because I'm a good trainer that I'm a better writer. But I don't get to do either of those things like I used to. The only one thing I've kept, and that's board training, because I believe board training is one of the most important things you can ever have in your life. For a 501c3, you need great board members. And so I've been doing training for United Way. They have a 10-week course, and that 10-week course has 9 different facilitators. I'm the only facilitator with 2 weeks because I'm Renée Sattiewhite, but I've been with it since it started. So 33 years later, I'm still teaching board and staff roles and relationships and preparing to run your nonprofit organization. That is the only thing I've been able to keep. I don't get to train anymore for AACUC. I get to go speak on behalf of AACUC and on behalf of things in the industry. SB and LaShonda, they don't let me do.
They don't let you do that anymore. Jill, what about, I saw the pain on your face as I asked that question. So,
well,
if you would have saw both, as I was asking the question, both Jill and Renee were like, So.
My boundaries may not be as clear as Renee's are on this one, where she's been able to say, okay, I love that thing, but just because I can doesn't mean I should. I still struggle a bit with that. We've talked before. We've talked often, Randy, about you're like, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. And I'm like, if it's not a hell no, it's a sure why not. And so I end up still saying yes to a lot of things. Honestly, my team did do a bit of an intervention. My previous business partner, Diana Dykstra, she gave me this, hey, you gotta be thoughtful about how much time you're spending on the business versus how much time you're in the business. And she didn't set a formula for me, but she told me to think about it. And so I have thought about it a lot in the 3 or 4 years since she said it. Still don't have an exact formula on that. Now, if I was training a board, I'd say, 80% strategic and looking forward and 20% looking back, but what's good for them may not be good for me. That said, there was a point where one of my team members said to me, you are not doing candidate interviews anymore. Like, this is not a thing that you need to do. The recruiters can handle interviews. You can still work with the clients. You can still pull that forward, but you are not interviewing candidates anymore. We have a team of people who is perfectly capable of doing that. And so while I'll still take a call from somebody who's saying, hey, I'm looking for my next opportunity, or can you give me any guidance into my career? I'll absolutely do that. But the actual questions, we have an incredibly capable team of recruiters who are very happy to actually do those interviews. So I'm slowly but surely identifying those things that may seem more like subject matter experts, where we have the subject matter experts to do them, and actually being able to say, okay, you're right. That's time I can reallocate to working on the business instead of in the business on that side of it.
Absolutely. It's a tough part.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, that's the thing, is that, like, I've said it anytime anybody's asked, or when somebody's starting up a business or a consulting thing and they just reach out to get a little insight. The most fun I ever had at CUInsight was year 2. And I wasn't making much money, and my hands were on everything. But it was just fun to create. But we would probably still be around if we just stayed where that fun time was, right? Like, and it didn't mean I didn't have fun the last 15 years after that, but it was that. So that idea of stepping away from things that made you successful or made the organization successful, and being like, okay, I can't be in all of that. My hands can't be on everything. So.
It's also good when someone's around you, like Jill said, the intervention. My staff, there was a time where I knew every statistic. I knew how many credit unions. I knew this, that. I knew all of that. And now when people ask me, I happily say, I am so sorry. I have staff now. I can point to the direction of the people who know that. And that was a challenge for my board, because I did know everything. I was able to get on my fingers right quick. I don't even have access to. That's not true. I have access to SharePoint. I don't know where anything is. Mm-hmm. I know where my stuff is, barely, but it's really good when your team wants to elevate you and they're taking ownership of, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. I've been doing it for so long and I get it done really well. That is painful to watch them suffer trying to get through stuff, but they're doing, like 2022, they had a rough time at St. Petersburg. They had a rough time. Externally, everything looked great. Internally, I gave them a C. But subsequent since then, they get A+ in their execution. And so they're getting better and better, because I think part of it is people have to see her way's really not that bad. It's just follow it. If you follow it, you can make it better. And I know where the pain points are. I've done it. So when you take that into consideration, I think it's really powerful when you have someone, when you have the intervention, when they say, no, this is what somebody used to tell me when I worked for a president at Creditor Resources years ago. And I was washing the dishes after an event. And he said, I pay you too much money to wash the dishes to get somebody else to do that. And so we had a cleaning lady and she was Black and I didn't even I was embarrassed because, I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know how to ask you to do this. And she said, oh, sure, I'll do it. And we came up with a rate for it. And I was really pleased with the rate. So one day he was in there washing the dishes. And I said, we pay you way too much money for you to be washing these dishes, man. And he had to laugh because he's the kind who'll do whatever needs to be done. But I got that. Like, I got that. Yeah, I got it.
There's that idea, and I think it often comes off bad or egotistical in a way or something, but it's like, is that below your pay grade? you're here in this organization with a certain set of skills. I remember, Jill, when you were starting Humanidei, you had a friend, I think from college or something, that was like, remember, you're getting paid for your experience, not your hours.
Yeah.
And like that to me is just that at some point you hope that your experience can be used in a better way than, not saying washing the dishes is important, but like what else could you be doing that helps further the organization?
Well, but sometimes it's okay to do that stuff. And I don't think people get
absolutely.
that part, right?
Yeah.
Like GAC, my staff, we didn't have a booth this year because we didn't have a nice area. And I was like, well, thanks, but no thanks. We'll just do something else. Well, since we didn't have a booth, my staff didn't show up until Saturday. Well, I had 3 different events up to that. All the boxes were in my room.
Yep.
Now, just because I could do it didn't mean I should do it.
Absolutely.
But I did do it because there was no one else to do it. But my staff was like, oh, no, Miss Renee, da-da-da. Well, when they came, I had everything ready for them to go.
You know what? But that's such an important thing because many credit unions are just like our organizations, where I think of Joanne Todd talking about, well, sometimes I have to be the one that shovels the snow in front of the bridge.
Right.
Just because, and so I agree with you completely there, that there are times that's when you have a smaller team, that does vary. But I do think it's important as we grow, though, to make sure that we're not getting stuck too far in the weeds, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's kind of this balance between this idea of don't ask your team to do anything you wouldn't do, but also make sure that you have everyone contributing at the highest possible value. So if the highest point of your contribution, or if the highest value contribution you can make is something that's not washing the dishes, then make sure that we're using our organizational resources in the right way. At the same time, if the dishes need to be done and you're the one who's there, like spend the 3 minutes on it and move on to the next thing, to make sure that and maybe reframe that. It's not just doing the dishes. It's making sure things still move the way they need to move. It's not just holding the boxes in your room. It's making sure that when everybody else gets there, they're ready to power through that.
I love it.
We have time for one more quick question here. So and quick's the important part, and then we'll get into wrapping this thing up with some takeaways. But Jill, anything that's just on your mind that you're like, I can't let Renee go without talking about this?
So this is a surprise question, but I think I'm going to put it out there because Randy put me on the spot for the last one. So one of the biggest challenges that I think when I talk to CEOs and their organization is growing, one of the challenges that maybe it's not the biggest, but it's the one that has stuck with me is they say, I used to know the name of every employee and the spouse of that person and their family members. And the more we grow, the less I know them personally. So I know we've talked about your mentorship and your investment and your connection to others. And you've talked about what you do that makes people feel welcome with that. But if you were giving advice to that leader who's worried that people won't feel how much they care as their sphere of influence gets bigger, what's the one thing you may say, and maybe especially because I know that passion you have and that reference you made to the young professionals, but how does that CEO who wants people to feel like they're part of this credit union family they're building, how do they connect with those new hires, those young professionals, those entry-level people, when maybe those are roles that, aren't on the C-suite, but maybe even aren't on the management level just yet?
So when I worked for a president years ago, I would arrange for him to meet with all the new hires monthly. They would do a lunch after 30 days with the CEO. So there are ways, again, being intentional about who's coming into the organization. I don't have that yet because we're not that big, but that's some of the things that I have coached other CEOs to do, is to have those lunch meetings where those new people can have a conversation with you. And they tell you something fresh about your organization that, I didn't realize the onboarding didn't include that. How do you not know who all of my board members are, right? That kind of stuff. So I think that it gives the CEO an opportunity not just to connect with people, but to also find out what's going on in the organization I'm just getting introduced. What does that look like? The other thing that's quite important to me is making sure that people understand that they can be successful. But it's the most important part, more than anything else, guys, more than anything else, is that you have to be authentic. People can read through that. If this is fake, then they're not going to pour into you. They're going to talk about you. And social media is intense. And so I think that the most important thing for any CEO, any leader, is to be authentic with their care. If you don't care, don't act like you do. You cannot fake caring.
I like that. Okay. I'm watching the clock here, and we do have to start wrapping up. I knew this was going to be the biggest struggle of this episode was we could talk for hours. That's why I think besides Jill, Renee, you've been on the CUInsight Experience the most. So, because I love conversations with you. Yeah. So, but anyways, this season we've wrapped up each show with just a quick takeaway, 60 seconds. And I'm going to start with Jill on this one. Like when you think of the growing pains and what we've talked about today, if there was one takeaway that you could leave with our listeners, what would it be? And Renee, since we're kind of springing this on you, we'll let the best go last year, and I'll add mine, and then we'll throw it to you to take us home.
All right. So I will give credit to both Renee and to Emma Hayes for this one. But I think that when I think about moving forward, scaling up, getting through the growing pains, I think that idea of keeping the end in mind, making sure they know what success looks like when we're done with this, being able to paint that vision of success, and then let the team find their way there, coach them along it. But if I don't, as a leader, make sure that they know the end we're striving for here, we're not going to get there. So that's my key takeaway is if you're going through growing pains, make sure those people around you know what success looks like on your way there. So what about you, Randy?
I almost just said that. Yeah. So I thought that was powerful. So I would just second that. If I have to add one, then on top of that, I do think that was just one of the most powerful things is, and this is going to just go from personal experience and seeing, whether like people leading organizations is to kind of from time to time personally, I'll take it from that, like the individual side instead of the organization side. But as a leader, I think you do have to kind of to step back, take a look in the mirror and say, okay, what got us here and me here might not be the most important thing for me to do for this organization to take us to the next step or the next level. And how do you take that time to reflect and say, where are your talents best used? Because that doesn't benefit just you. It benefits the organization. It benefits our entire credit union movement, everybody we're thinking about. So I would leave it with that. So Renee, bring us home.
So for me, and we didn't talk about this, but I know that I'm a great leader. I think I inspire people and all that, and everybody's keyed into my possibility of people serving other people passionately, but I'm not a good manager. And so being transparent with your team, letting them know and so I hired somebody who is, right? Like I said, my chief operating officer, Kelly, is killing it. So knowing who you are and what your strengths are, again, like Jill said, knowing that top tier, if you're doing, it's okay to do the dishes because you want the stuff to keep moving, but you got to be doing your top tier stuff as well. The other one that I'm going to leave you with is this: be unreasonable, but not unrealistic. Be unreasonable, but not unrealistic. And then the last one.
Guarantee John picks that one as the quote right there. So.
And being intentional. I think being intentional makes everything possible. And Randy, you can cut this out if you need to. But I remember when Jill started Humanidei, and the first thing I said was, "Oh, girlfriend, I love what you're doing. I love what you're doing. Can we endorse you? You need us to endorse you. Can we please endorse you?" And I think being intentional, I'm still endorsing this lady because I love what the organization stands for. And I'm so proud of you. So proud of you both.
And it still means everything to me to have your endorsement. So thank you.
Thank you so much. This was perfect and amazing. Just a few things here before we go. As always, we'll link to everything we talked about today in the show notes. Jill's very active on LinkedIn, so if she kind of keeps me in the loop on things, I've kind of gotten away from the social media a bit. We'd love to hear from you there. Share your thoughts, ask questions, give feedback, suggest future topics and guests. Let's keep this conversation going. A big thank you to our sponsor, Trellins. They're a leading technology partner for credit unions and a great supporter of ours, making it possible for us to have this much fun doing what we do. So be sure sure to check them out in the show notes as well. If you haven't already, subscribe to the CUInsight Experience on your favorite podcast player. We're on them all. And I know one thing we ran out of time on, but Renée had a couple books she was interested in. We will link to those in the show notes as well, so you can get those. We were talking about it before we hit record. But last, but certainly not least, a huge thank you to our friend Renée for being on the show. We absolutely love every time we get to see your face and have conversations with you. And thank you to everyone out there for listening. Y'all rock, and we appreciate each and every one of you. Be well, friends, and thanks again, Renée.